All right, welcome back to my uncomfort zone called YouTube. Still not any more comfortable with this than I was the last video that I made, but who knows? Maybe someday I'll get comfortable with it. At this point, I'm not sure how long this is going to last. Probably many of you are familiar with the fact that a new health mandate came down from our governor stipulating no gatherings over 10 people with no ending date on that mandate. So we'll just have to wait and see how things progress in the future. So, Lord willing, at least for the immediate future, I plan to continue to do these videos. I did realize something after the last video. I made reference to various links that you could follow underneath the video, and then actually went back and watched it embedded on the website and realized that you can't follow links to the embedded YouTube video. So if you want to follow the links, you have to go to the YouTube site. Let me try to show you that if I can make this work. So on our website, on the home page, you'll see that there's the update there for our church family, the link to do that. And if you click it, it'll go to where the video is. And at least on my computer, if I just click on the video itself, the video will play inside of that window, but you can't see the links. So if you want to see the links, you have to click the YouTube deal down at the bottom, and it will then take you to YouTube. And from there, if you click show more, you can then view the various links that I might mention in there. So I realized after I made mention of all those links that if you weren't on the YouTube site, then you couldn't see the links and follow the links. So hopefully that will help you in the future. There's not going to be any links in this video, so you don't have to worry about it for this one. But in the future, if I make mention that I'm going to link to something, you have to go to the YouTube site to actually follow those links. I do want to encourage you again, as I did last time. If you have any needs, please let us know. Various ones of you have done that, and others have plugged in and helped fill those needs. It's been very encouraging to see the care and concern that's taking place inside of our church family for each other, happening, if I could put it this way, in an organic way. People without prompting are calling each other, and especially our older couples and families that might need help, touching base with them. But again, if you need anything, please let us know, and we'll try to get it to you. I did want to touch on the normal midweek announcements. Those of you that are normally here on a Wednesday night, these would be announcements that you're familiar with. So let me just touch on some of those, and then perhaps some other things as well. By the way, Midweek Messenger is up on the website. Maybe I should show that to you as well, how you can access that. Give me a second here to go back to my screen here. Go back to the website. So if you're on the website, and probably you'll go straight to the home page. If you go over to the members section and click the login registration, that will take you to this page. If you've already registered, you've already entered all your information on the registration tab, then you should have a username and password, and you can put that in and log in. And if you forget your password, you can click forgot password, and it will take you to a page where it will connect you through email, so you can enter a new password. If you haven't registered, I know many of you have, but if you haven't registered, you've never been on the members part of the website, you'd click the registration tab here, put that information in and register, but then you're going to have to wait until I go to our website and recognize your registration and get that all set up for you, and you will get an email when I've done that. And I'll try to keep up with that and get that done right away. But I did want to show you how you could do that. It is only for our members. We're not trying to be snobbish or anything else, but there are some sensitive things, that sensitive prayer requests that show up on our midweek messenger, and so we don't make that available to the public in general. It is for our members, so just take note of that as well. And you can access that information. You can also access the calendar, the monthly calendar, and the members directory is also posted in that section, so members can get that on the website. Oh, let me go back to PowerPoint here and get this back up and running. So our regular midweek messenger announcements. Our family of the week is the Van Zyles, Dennis and Sonny. Very thankful for them and their fellowship here. Keep them in your prayers, especially this week, that God would strengthen them, encourage them, meet their needs, maybe give them a call, be an encouragement to them that way. But they're very thankful for Dennis and Sonny, and remember them especially in your prayers this week. Our missionary of the week this week is Lanita Losi in PNG. I did want to share with you an email I got from her just in the last week. I don't remember exactly what day, and you might not be able to read that. I'll read it for you. She said, "Dear Pastor John, it's Friday evening here in Papua New Guinea. It's been a pretty normal week here. Well, by PNG standards anyway. But I have been keeping in touch with friends back at home, so I know a bit about what's going on in Alaska and the rest of the U.S. Anyway, as I hear of churches going to online services, I think of all the decisions pastors and other church leaders are having to make at this time. Please know that while I am praying for all Christians who are seeking the Lord's will and determining how to show love to their neighbors at this time through social distancing to protect those at risk and seeking to find ways to help and encourage those in need, I pray specifically for you and your church family weekly. I'm feeling a bit removed from all the confusion right now, though at the same time watching and preparing for when it hits here. I'm thankful as I think of the uncertainty everywhere that God is still on his throne and we can trust he has a perfect plan. Anyway, just a quick note to say that I'm praying for you in Christ, Lanita. I also have an update from the Cranes. This is via Sarah Crosby. She said that there's an interesting situation taking place in PNG with the COVID-19 virus. There are two rumors floating around there in PNG. One that COVID-19 is caused by white people, and the second rumor being that you die 28 days after you get the virus. Both rumors, but could have far-reaching consequences for our missionaries there in PNG. There could be a certain amount of antagonism against them because they are white people. And also, it's not going to help limit the spread of the disease there in PNG if they think they can only get it from white people. So just pray especially for our missionaries there in PNG and the difficulties that they're facing generally right now with the situation there in PNG. There are some just general prayer requests I want to remind you of, and I'm sure most all of you pray for these anyway, but let me just lay these out there as we would normally spend some time in prayer together on a Wednesday night. We're not going to do that this Wednesday, obviously. But let me just remind you of a few prayer requests. Certainly pray for each other. Pray for our brothers and sisters in Christ here in our local body. Pray that the Lord would remove this virus so we can meet once again and I don't have to do this YouTube thing. Pray for provision. Pray that God would give us this day our daily bread. Matthew 6:11. Pray for growing faith in the middle of trials. We talked about that lots. Pray for those that are sick. I think especially as reminded this week as the cases continue to mount up in Ketchikan of our sister church, Gateway Baptist Church, Pastor John Judson there in Ketchikan. Pray for those that are sick. Pray for other believers around the world, many in far worse situations than we're in. Remember them in prayer. Pray for the missionaries, even as we've considered in PNG, but the missionaries wherever they might be around the world in the middle of this situation, wherever they're at. Pray for our leaders, national, state, local leaders. Pray that God would grant them wisdom as very important decisions are being made almost on a daily basis. Pray that God would give wisdom there. Pray for our leadership that are believers that do know the Lord. Pray the Lord would use them. They would be able to be salt and light in whatever position that God has put them in. Pray for those in the medical field. Certainly pray for their protection and safety as they serve others. And again, pray especially for those in the medical field that do know the Lord and may have special opportunities there to share their faith. Pray that the Lord would use this virus to draw many hearts to himself. In the example prayer for the disciples, pray that God's name would be hallowed or set apart as holy. So that's the information that I wanted to share with you at this point during the week. I do want to give some thoughts to you that hopefully will be somewhat of an encouragement to you. Not being able to gather with our church family has turned my thoughts back once again to the church and the purpose for the church. Many of the thoughts that I will present in this short little segment of encouragement here come from a book called What is a Healthy Church by Mark Dever. I did want to note that I'm pulling some of these thoughts from that book. And what I want to do is give you back up. We do this quite often. Back up and try to get a really big picture of the church. Let's zoom way back and take a look at the church in a timeline going all the way back to creation, and hopefully this will give us somewhat of a big picture of the church during this time period in which we aren't meeting, we aren't able to gather together. In Genesis 1:26, God said, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness." And then in verse 27, the Bible says, "So God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him." You know, we typically think of this being created in the image of God as we as human beings having mind, will, and emotions, the things that separate us from animals, if you will. And that's true. That's a part of being made in the image of God. But I would suggest there's more to it than that. God made man in his image so that man would represent God, mirror God, if you will, demonstrate who God is in God's creation. Man is to take that mind, will, and emotion given to him and being made in the image of God, and he is to portray a picture of who God is for God's glory. By the way, I think that's why the dominion mandate immediately follows verse 26 and 27. The dominion mandate in verse 28. God is sovereign over all, and man was to mirror God's dominion inside of God's creation. But then we have Genesis 3. Man decided that he didn't want to mirror God's character in God's creation. He didn't want to represent God's rule. He wanted to represent himself. He wanted to represent his own rule. And so man chose to reject God's rule in Genesis 3. And you're familiar with the account of Adam and Eve's sin there in Genesis 3. I say, well, do human beings preserve that image of God after the fall? In a certain sense, yes. Genesis 9:6, God speaking to Noah there, and he said, whoso sheddeth man's blood, by man shall his blood be shed, for in the image of God made he man. So man must still be in God's image, but after the fall, the image of God as seen in man is now distorted. Maybe the illustration of a carnival mirror would help us picture this. When you look in a carnival mirror, it might make you look extremely thin or extremely fat, or make your body look curvy and wavy. In other words, what you're seeing in the mirror is not really who you are. That image is distorted. It's twisted. Even in our sin, we're imaging something about God, but there's a truthfulness and a falseness about who God is mixed into that image. The picture that's presented of God in us now is not the true picture of God. It's distorted. Maybe you could think of it this way: man is corrupt. He no longer images God the way that he should. So man failed in representing the character of God in God's creation. As we continue to move on through the Old Testament, God then chooses a nation to represent him before the world, the nation of Israel. He had a plan to both save and use this group of people for accomplishing his original purposes in creation. That original purpose of displaying his glory, his character. He called Israel a holy nation. He called them a kingdom of priests. You can see that in Exodus 19, verses 5-7. He even called Israel his son. Sons, in one respect, mirror the image of their fathers. Sons are supposed to follow in their father's footsteps. He calls Israel his son. They were to display who God was to the nations of the earth. But just like Adam and Eve, they too failed. Instead of displaying who God was in front of the nations, they became just like the other nations. So Adam failed to display God's glory. Israel failed to display God's glory. None of that was a surprise to God. And then, when the fullness of time was come, God sent forth his son, Galatians 4:4. By the way, a son that is referred to as the second Adam, and is also referred to as Israel, as we've seen in the book of Isaiah. God sent forth his son. Jesus was made in the likeness of man, but he was also the express image of the Father, 2 Corinthians 4:4. He perfectly represented the Father here on earth. Jesus told Philip, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father. Jesus was perfectly obedient to the Father. He also perfectly mirrored God's mercy, love, and grace by going to a cross to die in our place. So finally, we had an undistorted mirror of God, if you want to think of it that way. What Adam failed to do and what Israel failed to do, Jesus did. But what was the purpose of Jesus coming? And you know this. He came to die in our place. Why? This is an interesting thought. So that we might be conformed to the image of his Son. Romans 8:29. Jesus was the perfect image of the Father, and we're to be the perfect image of Jesus. Like Father, like Son, capital S, Jesus, like sons, little s, us, believers. Now, granted, that's an ongoing process. We call that process sanctification. It hasn't been completed yet. We call the completion what will be in the future, the completion of that process, glorification. But all believers are being made into the image of Jesus for God's glory. We're to display the character and likeness and image and glory of the Son, who is just like the Father. So what does all this have to do with the church? I thought you said this was going to be about the church. Can't we as individuals display the character of Jesus to the world around us? Can't the world get a picture of who God is through us as individuals? And the answer to that question is certainly, absolutely. And the world should get a picture of who God is by looking at our life. But God has ordained an institution in this age called the church that will corporately display his glory to the world. We gather and study the word for what purpose? To become more like Christ. We encourage one another and build one another up for what purpose? Hebrews 10. To become more like Christ. We fellowship for what purpose? Well, ultimately, to become more like Christ. We love one another, all those one another's that we find in the New Testament. For what purpose? To show the world Christ's love. To give them a correct picture of his character. So what Adam and Israel failed to do in the past, God is doing through the church today. He's displaying his power and glory to the world through his church. His image is being seen. Think about those metaphors that we considered when we thought about the church. God's image is being seen through his body, of whom Christ is the head, and we're all members. His image is being seen through his temple. His image is being seen through his people, his sons, if you will. Right now, the church is not gathering for corporate worship, not because we don't want to, but because we can't for safety reasons. And I don't know about you, but I certainly missed the multitude of benefits that would have come with the gathering of the church on Sunday. But we do have a unique opportunity in the middle of this situation to demonstrate the character of our God, to be a mirror of his character, to show the world who he is through our response to this situation. So think about it. Our lack of anxiety in the middle of this situation can speak loudly of our Father's goodness. Our confidence in the middle of this situation can speak loudly of our Father's power. Our love, demonstrated to each other and certainly to the world around us, can speak loudly of our Father's love. I thought about this week. The world is hoarding everything from toilet paper to dried milk. The world is hoarding. While the world is hoarding, Christians should be giving. Stop and consider this thought. God hasn't given us anything that he doesn't mean for us to share in some form or another. May our actions and our attitudes during this time mirror our God's glory. I want to end on an encouraging note with this verse from 1 John chapter 3. one day, the mirror called you, created for the purpose of displaying God's glory, one day that mirror will be completely fixed. No more distortions. You will mirror your Father with absolutely no distortions, and you will do so for his glory. Beloved, now are we the sons of God, and it doth not yet appear what we shall be. But we know that when he shall appear, we shall be like him, for we shall see him as he is. The mirror will be fixed. Once again, we will correctly reflect who God is for his glory. Before I end the video, I just want to say this. I covet your prayers. I'm struggling a little bit in this unusual circumstance to know the best way to minister to our church family. I plan on spending some time the next day or two trying to sort out what that might look like, as it might be several more weeks before we're able to meet again. I certainly will keep you updated as time progresses. In the meantime, I would encourage you read 1 Peter 1, 3-9. We can still greatly rejoice, even though now for a little while we're distressed by various trials.